just one barrel. Oh.
The Conte di Cavour-class was designed to counter the French Corvette-class dreadnoughts, which caused them to be slower and more heavily armored than the first Italian dreadnought, Dante Alighieri. The ships were 168.9 meters, or 554 feet 2 inches, long at the waterline, and 176 meters, or 577 feet 5 inches overall. They had a beam of 28 meters, or 91 feet 10 inches, and a draft of 9.3 meters, or 30 feet 6 inches. The Conte di Cavour-class ships displaced 23,088 long tons at normal load, and 25,086 long tons at deep load. They had a crew of 31 officers and 969 enlisted men. The ships were powered by 3 sets of Pariston steam turbines, 2 sets driving the outer propeller shafts, and 1 set the 2 inner shafts. Steam from the turbines were provided by 20 Belchand water tube boilers, 8 of which burned oil, and 12 of which burned both fuel oil and coal. Designed to reach a maximum speed of 22.5 knots from 31,000 shaft horsepower, Conte di Cavour failed to reach this goal on her sea trials, despite mildly exceeding the rated power of her turbines, reaching only 22.2 knots from 31,278 ship horsepower. The ships carried enough coal and oil to give them a range of 4,800 nautical miles at 10 knots. The main battery of the Conte di Cavour-class consisted of 13 305mm Model 1909 guns and 5 centerline gun turrets, with a twin gun turret superfiring over a triple gun turret in fore and aft pairs, and a third triple turret amidships. Their secondary armament consisted of 18 120mm or 4.7-inch guns, mounted in casemates on the sides of the hull in single mounts. For defense against torpedo boats, the ships carried 14 76.2mm or 3-inch guns. 13 of these could be mounted on the turret tops, but they could also be positioned in 30 different locations, including some on the forecastle and upper decks. They were also fitted with 3 submerged 450mm or 17.7-inch torpedo tubes, 1 on each broadside, and the third in the stern. The Conte di Cavour-class had a complex waterline armor belt that had a maximum thickness of 250mm or 9.8 inches amidships, which reduced to 130mm or 5.1 inches towards the stern, and 80mm or 3.1 inches towards the bow. They had 2 armored decks. The main deck was 24mm or 0.94 inches thick on the flat, that increased it to 40mm or 1.6 inches on the slopes that connected to the main belt. The second deck was 30mm or 1.2 inches thick. Frontal armor of the turrets was 280mm or 11 inches in thickness, and the sides were 240mm or 9.4 inches in thickness. The armor protecting their battery or their barbettes ranged in thickness from 130 to 230 millimeters or 5.1 inches to 9.1 inches. The walls of the forward conning tower were 280 millimeters thick. Shortly after the end of World War I, The number of 76.2 millimeter low range guns or low angle guns were reduced to 13, all mounted on the turret tops, and 6 new 76.2 millimeter anti-aircraft or AA guns were installed abreast the aft funnel. In addition, 2 license-built 2-pounder 1.6-inch or 40 millimeter AA guns were mounted on the forecastle deck. In 1925 to 1926, the foremast was replaced by a four-legged tribunal mast, which was moved forward of the funnels. The rangefinders were upgraded, and the ship was equipped to handle a Mach M18 seaplane mounted on the amidships turret. Around the same time, she was equipped with a fixed aircraft catapult on the port side of the forecastle. Conte di Cavour began an extensive reconstruction in October of 1933 at the central retreat di Alberco shipyards in Testril that lasted until June of 1937. A new bow section was graphed over the existing bow, which increased their overall length by 10.34 meters, or 33 feet 10 inches, to 186.4 meters, or 611 feet 7 inches, and her beam increased to 28.6 meters, or 93 feet 10 inches. The ship's draft at deep load increased to 10.02 meters, or 32 feet 10 inches. All of the changes made increased her displacement to 26,140 long tons at standard load and 29,100 long tons at deep load. The ship's crew increased to 1,260 officers and enlisted men. 2 of the propeller shafts were removed, and the existing turbines were replaced by 2 Belliso geared steam turbines, rated at 75,000 ship horsepower. The boilers were replaced by 8 Yarrow boilers. In service, her maximum speed was about 27 knots, and she had a range of 6,400 nautical miles at a speed of 13 knots. The main guns were bored out to 32 millimeters, or 12.6 inches, and the amidships guns, or the amidship turret and torpedo tubes, were removed. All of the existing secondary armament and AA guns were replaced by a dozen 120 millimeter guns in 6 twin gun turrets and 8 100 millimeter or 3.9 inch AA guns in twin turrets. In addition, the ship was fitted with a dozen Beretta 37 millimeter 1.5 inch light AA guns in 6 twin gun mounts and 12 100 or 13.2 millimeter 0.52 inch Beretta M31 anti-aircraft machine guns, also in twin mounts. In 1940, the 13.2mm machine guns were replaced by 20mm 0.8 inch AA guns in twin mounts. The tribunal mast was replaced with a forward conning tower, protected with 260mm or 10.2 inches thick armor. Atop the conning tower, there was a fire control director fitted with 2 large stereoscopic rangefinders with a base length of 7.2 meters, or 32.6 feet. The deck armor was increased during the reconstruction to a total of 135 millimeters, or 5.3 inches, over the engine and boiler rooms, and 166 millimeters, or 6.5 inches, over the magazines. Although its distribution over 3 decks meant that it was considerably less effective than a single plate of the same thickness. The armor protecting the barbettes was reinforced with 50 millimeter or 2-inch plates. All this armor weighed a total of 3,227 long tons. The existing underwater protection was replaced by the Portuguese torpedo defense system, a large cylinder surrounded by fuel oil or water that was intended to absorb the blast of a torpedo warhead. It lacked enough depth to be fully effective against contemporary torpedoes. A major problem of the reconstruction was that the ship's increased draft meant that their waterline armor belt was almost completely submerged with any significant load. Conte di Cavour, named after the statesman Count Camillo Denso di Cavour, was laid down at Arsenal di Lipritz, or La Spurgers, on the 10th of August, 1910, and launched on the 10th of August, 1911. She was completed on the 1st of April, 1915, and served as a flagship in the southern Adriatic Sea during World War I. She saw no action, however, and spent little time at sea. Admiral Paolo Thun di Rebel, the Italian naval chief of staff, believed that the Austro-Hungarian submarines and mine layers could operate too effectively in the narrow waters of the Adriatic. The threat from these underwater weapons to his capital ships was too serious for him to actively deploy the fleet. Instead, de Revel decided to implement a blockade on the relatively safer southern end of the Adriatic with the battle fleet, while smaller vessels, such as MAS torpedo boats, conducted raids on Austro-Hungarian ships and installations. Meanwhile, de Revel's battleships can be preserved to confront the Austro-Hungarian battle fleet in the event that it sought a decisive engagement. In 1919, she sailed to North America and visited ports in the United States, as well as Halifax, Canada. The ship was mostly inactive in 2000 and 1921 because of personnel shortages, and was refitted at Le Pritz from November to March of 1922. Conte di Cavour and Giulio Cesare supported Italian operations on Corfu in 1923, after an Italian general and his staff were murdered at the Greek Albanian frontier. Italian leader Benito Mussolini, who had been looking for a pretext to seize Corfu, ordered Italian troops to occupy the island. Conte di Cavour bombarded the main town on the island with her 76mm guns, killing 20 civilians and wounding 32. She escorted King Victor Emmanuel III and his wife aboard Dante Alighieri on a state visit to Spain in 1924, and was replaced in reserve upon her return until 1926, when, in April, she convoyed Mussolini on a voyage to Libya. The ship was again placed in reserve from 1927 until 1933, when she began her reconstruction. Early in World War II, the Conte di Cavour and her sister took part in the Battle of Calabria, also known as the Battle of the Puto Steel, or Puneta Stelio. On the 9th of July, 1940, they were part of the 1st Battle Squadron, commanded by Admiral Inigo Campanelli, or Camponi, when they engaged major events or elements of the British Mediterranean Fleet. The British were escorting a convoy from Malta to Alexandria when the Italians had finished escorting another from Naples to Benghazi. In Italian Libya, Vice Admiral Andrew Cunningham, commander of the Mediterranean Fleet, attempted to impose his ships against the Italians and their base at Taranto. And crews of the fleet spotted each other in the middle of the afternoon, and the Italian battleships opened fire at 15:53 at a range of nearly 27,000 meters. The two leading British battleships, the HMS Warspite and the HMS Malaya, replied a minute later. 3 minutes after she opened fire, shells from the Giulio Cesare began to straddle Warspite, which made a small turn and increased speed to throw off the Italian ship's aim. At 1600 hours, at the same time, a shell from the HMS Warspite struck the Giulio Cesare at a distance of about 24,000 meters. Uncertain how severe the damage was, Camponi ordered his battleships to turn away in the face of the superior British numbers, and they successfully disengaged. Repairs to Giulio Cesare were complete by the end of August, and both ships unsuccessfully attempted to intercept British convoys in Malta in August and September. On the night of the 11th of November 1940, Conte di Cavour was at anchor in Taranto harbor when she was attacked, along with several other warships, by 21 fairly swordfish torpedo bombers from the British aircraft carrier HMS Illustrious. The ship's gunners shot down one swordfish shortly after the aircraft dropped its torpedo, but it exploded underneath B turret at 23:15, knocking out the main bow pump. Her captain, Rick, and I requested tugboats to help ground the ship on a nearby 12-meter or 39-foot sandbank at 23:27. But Admiral Bruno Bruniski, commander of the 5th Battle Division, vetoed the request until it was too late, and Conte di Cavour had to use a deeper 17-meter or 56-foot sandbank to 04:47 the following morning. She initially grounded on an even keel, but temporarily took on a 50-degree list before settling to the bottom at 0800 hours with an 11.7 degree list. Only her superstructure and gun turrets were above water by this time. Conte di Cavour had the lowest priority for salvage among the 3 battleships sunk during the attack, and little work was done for several months. The first priority was to patch the holes in the hull, and then her guns and parts of her superstructure were removed to lighten the ship. False bulwarks were welded to the upper sides of the hull to prevent water from re-entering the ship, and pumping the water overboard began in May of 1941. Some 15,000 long tons of water were pumped out before Conte di Cavour was refloated on the 9th of June and entered the ex-Austro-Hungarian floating dry dock GO-12 on the 12th of July. The damage was more extensive than originally thought, and temporary repairs to enable the ship to reach test use for permanent repairs took until the 22nd of December. Her guns were operable by September of 1942, but replacing her entire electrical system took longer, so the Navy took advantage of the delays and incorporated some modifications to reduce the likelihood of flooding based on lessons learned from the attack. Other changes planned were the replacement of her secondary and anti-aircraft weapons with a dozen 138mm or 5.3-inch dual-purpose guns in twin mounts, 12 50 or 65mm 2.6-inch and 23 20mm AA guns. The repair work was suspended in June of 1943, but with an estimate 6 months' work remaining on Conte di Cavour. In order to expedite the construction of the urgent needed smaller ships, She was captured by the Germans on the 8th of September when Italy surrendered to the Allies and was reduced to a hulk. She was damaged in an air raid on the 17th of February, 1945, and capsized on the 23rd of February. Refloated shortly after the end of the war, Conte di Cavour was scrapped in 1946. And that concludes today's video. If you guys did enjoy it, please go hit the subscribe button and ring that notification bell so that you guys do not miss out on any future content. Please like the video and share it with a friend or family member that probably would be interested in this video. Please watch more content that the channel makes. And with that being said, again, I thank everybody for tuning in, and I shall see you guys in the next video. Peace out.